The federal courthouse in Manhattan was completely silent, as 83-year-old Janice Combs, mother of music mogul Sean "Diddy" Combs, was escorted to the witness stand. The tension in the air was so thick, you could feel it pressing against your skin. Every eye in the courtroom followed her slow but deliberate steps toward the front of the room. Even the most hardened reporters stopped typing, their fingers frozen above keyboards. The bailiff's shoes squeaked slightly against the polished floor. The only sound breaking the heavy silence, Diddy, who had maintained an air of calm confidence throughout the entire trial up to this point, suddenly stiffened in his seat at the defense table. His hands, which had been casually flipping through documents moments before, now gripped the edge of the table with white-knuckled intensity. His attorneys exchanged alarmed glances, their carefully constructed defense strategy suddenly thrown into chaos by this unexpected development. The prosecution team, who had been waiting for this moment, sat up straighter in their chairs, their expressions carefully neutral, but their body language radiating anticipation. This was the turning point they had been waiting for. Not just another witness, but the defendant's own mother taking the stand against him. The judge adjusted his glasses and studied the elderly woman with quiet interest. Clearly as surprised as everyone else by this dramatic development, the courtroom sketch artists, who had been lazily doodling during previous testimony, now worked frantically to capture every detail of this historic moment. Janice Combs reached the witness stand and was sworn in with a quiet "I do." Her voice was steady, but carried the weight of her years. She settled into the chair, adjusting her glasses with hands that showed just the slightest tremor, whether from age or emotion. It was impossible to say. She didn't look at her son, keeping her gaze fixed straight ahead. Diddy, normally so composed in public, now looked like a man who had been physically struck. The color had drained from his face, leaving his normally golden complexion ashen. His usually expressive eyes were wide, with something that looked remarkably like fear. His attorneys leaned in to whisper to him, but he seemed not to hear them. His entire attention focused on his mother. The prosecutor approached the witness stand with deliberate calm. "Mrs. Combs, thank you for being here today. I know this must be extremely difficult for you." His voice was respectful, almost gentle. In stark contrast to his usual courtroom demeanor, Janice nodded slightly but said nothing. Her lips pressed into a thin line. The prosecutor continued, "Could you please state your relationship to the defendant for the record?" Janice took a deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her soul. "I'm his mother." Those three simple words carried an ocean of meaning: love, pain, history, betrayal. The gallery collectively leaned forward, sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. Even the court stenographer paused for half a second before continuing to type. What followed was, perhaps, the most devastating testimony ever delivered in a celebrity trial. Janice Combs spoke for nearly 3 hours, her voice growing stronger as she went on, as if the act of finally telling the truth was giving her strength. She began by describing raising Sean as a single mother in Harlem after his father was murdered. When the boy was just 3 years old, she talked about working multiple jobs as a teacher's aide during the day, cleaning offices at night to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. Her voice softened slightly as she recalled a young Sean's boundless energy and charisma, how even as a child he could convince anyone of anything with his quick smile and infectious laugh. But, as she continued, her tone changed. She described watching her son's meteoric rise in the music industry with a mixture of pride and growing concern. At first, it was just small things, she said. The way he started treating people who worked for him, the way he would explode over tiny mistakes. the way women seemed to come and go from his life so quickly. She paused, adjusting her glasses again. I told myself it was just the stress of his success, that he was still my good boy underneath it all. Then came the more disturbing revelations. She recounted visiting his various mansions over the years and noticing things that unsettled her, young women who seemed dazed or frightened, staff members who jumped at the sound of his voice, private rooms where even she wasn't allowed to enter. She described one particularly chilling incident. In 2008, when she arrived, unannounced at his Miami estate after one of his famous parties, there was staff cleaning up, but it wasn't normal. She recalled, her voice dropping slightly. They were gathering phones, dozens of phones, from different rooms. I saw a young woman crying while security escorted her out. When Sean saw me there, he didn't hug me or ask how I was. He was furious that I hadn't called first. The courtroom was utterly silent as she continued, describing how her concerns grew over the years but how she kept quiet, telling herself she was overreacting. That changed when Cassie's lawsuit became public and the hotel surveillance video surfaced. I called him screaming, Janice said, her voice breaking for the first time. I demanded to know how he could do such a thing. He told me it was just one moment taken out of context, that I didn't understand his world. She shook her head slowly. But I did understand. I'd seen glimpses of that anger before. I just didn't want to believe it. The most devastating moment came when she described visiting Diddy in jail before the trial. I needed to hear the truth from him, as his mother, she said, her voice barely above a whisper now. What he told her in that private meeting would haunt her forever. He said, "Mum, you don't build an empire like mine by playing fair. People get hurt. That's just how it works." A single tear rolled down her cheek as she added, "That's when I knew my son, the boy I raised, was gone." Throughout her testimony, Diddy sat completely still, his expression unreadable. His attorneys objected repeatedly, but their protests grew weaker as Janice continued. The prosecution guided her carefully through her account, presenting physical evidence that corroborated her story, photographs of Diddy's properties, records of financial transactions, even pages from notebooks where Janice had written down her concerns over the years. As she finally stepped down from the witness stand, after nearly 3 hours, the courtroom remained silent for a long moment before erupting into hushed whispers. The impact of her testimony was seismic, not just for the trial, but for Diddy's entire legacy. A mother's love had confronted a son's crimes, and nothing would ever be the same again. The remainder of the trial day passed in a blur, as lawyers argued over the admissibility of certain evidence, but everyone knew the real story had already been told. Janice Combs' testimony would be analyzed and discussed for years to come, not just for its legal implications, but for what it revealed about power, fame, and the painful limits of a mother's love. As the court adjourned for the day, Diddy was whisked away by his security team, his face hidden behind dark sunglasses. His mother left through a different exit, surrounded by family members, but looking utterly alone in her grief. The two would never speak again after that day in court. Their relationship, another casualty of Diddy's relentless pursuit of power at any cost.